shout out, there are a few cast members in the audience. I know I'm going to embarrass them. I think actually, is Chris Rogers in the house? Yeah, where are you there? Okay, so Chris Rogers plays Bud, who is running in Speed the Wheel. True story. Chris was cast in a different part, which he also filmed. He's also in the back of the other, at the changing room with all the coloured jumpsuits. And for various reasons, the actor who was originally supposed to play Blood had to drop out at the very last minute. And I said to Naira, our producer, I said, oh God, it's a shame we already used Chris Rogers because he'd be perfect for that bit. And then I thought, well, he could just be his own twin brother. So I thought, you're on Speed the Wheel as Bud, and then I'm thinking, and then you were in a Speed the Wheel jumpsuit later, so I was thinking his own twin brother has come to avenge his brother's death. So Chris Rogers in the movie twice. I'm going to point down and embarrass these guys down here. In the role of Hunter number 1, but also Captain Holloway, in the middle of a very brutal fist fight in the cockpit, Joey Ansar is in the house. I know this audience, I know some of you will, like me, have seen and loved The Bone Temple. And Samson in The Bone Temple is played by Chi Lewis Parry, who also played Negative Dude, who you see very briefly. Chi Lewis Parry is in the house. Chi Lewis Parry. Legend, a living legend, in the role of Elton's mother Victoria, Sandra Dickinson is in the house.
All right. Any other crew members or cast members working in the shadows? No, we're good. Excellent stuff. So Edgar, in a way, this is kind of where your journey with this movie began, with Glenn Powell.
Yes.
The BFI.
It's true, actually. The first time I ever met Glenn in person, we sort of started texting for various reasons. Top Gun Maverick was like finished 2 years before it came out, and I had actually seen it, and I'd actually messaged him to say, hey, I've seen the movie. Like, I know I'm not supposed to see it, but like, you're great at it. So we started texting, and then he was over in London, and he said, I'm in London just briefly. What are you doing tomorrow morning? And I was actually coming here to see a movie, and I said, I'm coming to see a movie at the BFI, you're welcome to join me. So he did. So actually, me and Glenn, it was kind of like a bit of a mandate, to be honest. Next door in NFT2, we watched the remastered Get Carter, with like a sort of a cup of tea in our hand.
Yeah, the Stallone version, obviously.
And the Michael Caine version.
Oh, okay.
I guess Michael Caine is in the Stone as well. So
That's true, that's true.
1971.
And were you thinking of him even then, as your friend Richards? Was Running Man in development at that point?
No, I think it probably is in development, but no, it hadn't. We started writing in earnest early 22, and so I don't remember when that was. Maybe it was before that. Either way, that didn't really happen until there was the writers' strikes in 2023, where the industry in the Hollywood and a lot of the UK industry kind of shut down for half the year. So it didn't. We were working on the script the whole time, not during the writers' strike. Very clear about that. But it didn't really kind of start to ramp up as a thing that might happen until 2024, and that's when sort of Glenn first sort of like came into play, you know.
So you weren't necessarily visualizing it as you were writing the screenplay?
You know what? Not really, actually, because I think it's something where, when you're. I mean, I'll say this. I've told the story before, but it's true. It's like. When you're making a video like this, it's not like the studio tells you who you have to cast, but they do this thing, they say, we'd love you to consider one of these people. And it's like the list, that goes around, it's all the kind of the people that you'd expect to see on that list. And I'd say about that, and lots of people on there that I love, and some of whom I've worked with, but most of the people on that list, I've already seen them in movies killing hundreds of bad guys. And so there's a thing where I think for this to work in the way that we intended, for the Ben Richards to be the guy who's in the novel who is, is not necessarily equipped to win the game. it was really important to have somebody that you hadn't seen do all of that stuff, because I think it's really difficult to go backwards for an actor when you see them really adept to sort of. I always found that with I know I shouldn't badmouth that movie. I'm not gonna you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I've stopped myself.
I can do that for you.
I tell you afterwards, one by one in the
I'll queue up outside the room, and then people do that for you. But in terms of Glenn's approach to the role, it's really, really fascinating. We watched the film again tonight, and I was really struck by the opening line of the movie. The first thing that Glenn says is, "I'm not angry," and then spends the next 2 hours disproving that. He's really intense in this movie. Can you talk about with him on that and getting those levels of anger up?
I think the whole idea with the character, and it's very much there in the book, is here's a guy, that this is a sort of totalitarian society where you would do a lot better if you just went along with all the other sheep and you didn't kind of speak out, or you just kind of did what you're told, and he just can't not tell a bully to go fuck themselves. Yeah. And so he's basically a guy that sort of like just has to stand up for himself and others. And of course, where that kind of like gets you into the movie is when he's in that scene, the registration booth, when he gets finally to the front of the line, and the guy behind the counter is kind of passively aggressively prodding him. They want him to lose his temper, and as soon as he's lost his shit in front of that guy, he's kind of earmarked as being good TV. It's like, send that guy up. He's in elevator 6.
Yeah.
He's good TV. So
that's Brolin's voice. You can hear in the
yeah,
here, right?
Yeah. So that was always the idea, is that you wanted sort of like his. I always sort of thought of it, and it's actually funny that Joey's here, who was in the kind of like a very difficult to shoot cockpit fight. We always thought when Ben gets kind of angry, it's like Popeye's had his spinach. You know what I mean? It's like sort of like and also Glenn is genuinely like the video you sort of like, he's like the nicest guy, and so it is really nice to take somebody like that and like sort of and make him lose his rag. It's kind of like it's that thing they used to say about sitcoms. It was always that thing about put your main character up a tree and throw sticks at them. Yeah. And so that's the thing, is that he's got a fatal flaw, is he kind of got a short fuse. Yeah. Especially about injustice. So you've got to put him in situations where he's going to lose it.
What sort of directions are you giving him? For example, that scene on the jet where Killian says, "By the way, your wife and child are murdered," and he absolutely loses it. What are you saying to him before that take?
I have to say, actually, I didn't have to say a lot, but it was also the thing that Glenn was the most not nervous about doing, but he really wanted to get that right. And I think that scene and the end scene was really, so he really kind of prepped for it. And I think actually the bit where he smashes the monitor and the glass table was take 1 of 1. Because I think once it kind of happened, it's like, okay, so we've got that. Yeah. But I think he really wanted to make it seem really. We did talk about it's a completely different film. It's a completely different film. I was always really struck by, and some people in the audience will have seen this film and know what I'm talking about. There's a scene in the Paul Schrader film Hardcore where George C. Scott is there's a scene, a very key scene in the movie, where it just stays on his face and you see him just like crumbling and getting so furiously angry, and that was something we sort of talked about, that of like, but Glenn really kind of went for it in there. And also those scenes, both for Josh and for Glenn, they're looking right at the camera, which is a very intense thing to do. Yeah. And actually when Glenn did it on his own, Josh had already finished his scenes by then, but when Josh is talking to the camera, we did that thing, it's the Errol Morris trick, it's called the Interrotron that they did in documentaries. I did it on the Sparks Brothers, where you have a mirror, so Josh Brolin could look in the camera and Glenn was sitting slightly off the camera with a mirror, and he could be talking to him. Because, Josh Brolin in this final half an hour has to do, it's like, pages and pages talking directly to the lens. Yeah. But he could see Glenn in the lens. Glenn did it without Josh, and actually Glenn said, "I think it'd be better for me if I did it. I don't need anybody else there." But he did really get himself into a frenzy. It was impressive.
Did he have Josh in his ear?
Yeah. We were playing the text that we'd already done.
Amazing. Let's go back to the beginning of your journey with this, because as you say, you read the Stephen King / Richard Bachman novella when you were 14 years old. Were you the budding young filmmaker that you were even then, just a few years away from the Fistful of Fingers? Were you visualizing a movie in your head at that point?
Well, I mean, I didn't think that I would. I mean, I had no at that when I was 14, I mean, I had an interest in film, and I knew I wanted to do it, but I didn't know how, or I didn't have any connections in the industry, or it's just like at that point just making sort of goofy amateur movies, including so no, I think it's just that thing. I think I said it in the intro. I'm sure most of you out there that when you read a book, you start to visualize the movie in your head.
Yeah.
Which I saw is a weird thing because there was already a movie of it, but I visualized the movie that was on the pages rather than the one that they made in '87.
So eventually you get to the point where this does come around, it does come your way, and you write a screenplay with Michael LaColle. And as you say, the world's greatest, most popular English teacher, Stephen King, gets to read your screenplay. You said you were nervous about that. What were his notes like? What were the notes like from the world's greatest English teacher?
Well, he did this thing initially, which I saw was giving me too much of a heart attack, is he was sort of like kind of reviewing it page by page and scream. I'd say, yeah, that's it.
Oh,
and then it was like,
cool.
At some point I was just like, my heart can't take it anymore. I said, I just think, I really hope you just, and then eventually you just read the whole thing. But he was very encouraging, and you know, like we changed the ending from the book. The book, as I'm sure some of you know who've read it, is very nihilistic, and also between the book being published and there are real life events that are incredibly close and nothing that we ever considered shooting because it'd just be very poor taste. So we knew we had to come up with a different resolution. And the thing is, Stephen King, you know, when you wrote that book in the 70s, he's an angry young man, and he's now nearly 80, and so he actually said in his email, he goes, I was curious what you do with the ending, and I think it's a really good song, I loved it. So it was like having that from him was sort of amazing, and just to get, you know, just to be, I mean, it's pretty, I mean, also you get these emails that says, from Stephen King, you get.
That's one that goes on the wall.
Stephen King at AOL.com.
I know, just go and check that one out. But the ending is interesting because, you know, without giving anything away, Richards doesn't live necessarily in the book, and that was something that you immediately wanted to change. Not necessarily the maybe controversial elements of the ending, but that Ben would be a beacon of hope.
I think also with the way the worlds are is that the idea of ending with that spark of revolution was something that we wanted to do instead. So it's like he's the start of the insurgents, you know.
Yeah, and it's a very faithful adaptation in all other aspects. Is that something that you want to do right from the off?
I mean, the key things, and one of these, so the key things would be in terms of, there's lots of things about it, but one was like who Ben Richards is. He's not an existing action hero, he's like an out of work dad. Number two is that the book was all completely from his point of view, and so we wanted to keep that, because a lot of other films in this genre, whether it's like a Hunger Games or even like Harrison Ford in The Fugitive, you'll go to like a scene with Tommy Lee Jones and then back again. But we knew like the book is like, if you can stay with Ben, it's going to make it really intense, and also it shows that you don't have any information that he doesn't have, and that was the sort of set. And then the other thing was the game itself. In the '87 film, it's all sort of contained into an underground arena in one night, and this is like 30 days on the run all over the world, all over the country. And I will say this about the original film is that when I was a teenager and I watched the original film, that part of it, the fact that it wasn't like all over the country, I was a bit disappointed initially. And now, having made the movie and done 165 locations, I realised that the makers of the 1987 film made a sensible brand. So I want to give it up to them.
What was your previous record for locations? Was it past 100?
I don't know actually. I suspect probably Baby Driver has. But this was the tough thing, as you've seen the movie, is it's not just Glenn's story. It's like all of the TV bits as well. We had to shoot. There's nothing in the movie that wasn't shot by us. There's no like stock footage. So everything, all of the reality shows, the other game show that Chris is in, Speak the Wheel, all the adverts, all of the death scenes. Or maybe this is a good tee up.
Oh, maybe it is because.
I'll explain. So we're going to show a clip from something that's on the 4K and on the sort of the extras that are out there. So we had to, you see it in Josh Brolin's office, and you see it on the kind of the Apostle like supercut. We sort of had to shoot so many different death scenes, and we called them like the hardest hits. Just so you see it in the office going around on the video wall, and so all the way through production, we constantly shooting death scenes. So at some point, every member of the stunt team is in one of these, and I think actually I found out that this specific extra in the German market has caused. The film is a 15, but the extras are an 18. So we want to show you. I want to say that this hardest hits. It's sort of like watching an extremely violent version of You've Been Framed. And also there was a really good shot of Joey in this as well. Joey does a spectacular look for camera. So when that comes up, I'd like to give him a round of applause.
2.5 minutes of people's best bits. And afterwards, you'll be able to ask Edgar some questions as well. So should we roll the clip?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's roll the clip.